Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com, here with my good old Warriors deck that I played for playing on a budget a couple weeks back for Gathering Magic, that I've been playing pretty successfully in the new standard rotation. And with the Star City Open Atlanta this past weekend being filled with green-white Megamorph, I am still under the impression that this deck will do very, very well in your local metagame when every one of the spikes is just going to copy and paste the green-white Megamorph and bring it to your FNMs and other standard tournaments. And this Warriors deck you see in front of you has performed very well against Abzan variants. And that is with like trying to race a bunch of Siege Rhinos and opposing Sorens, and a lot of them have been playing Warden of the First Tree and cards like that. So life gain is something that I'm used to actually dealing with and still pushing through. And I don't know if I'll adjust this based on the metagame, because Valor Stance used to be just the best card in the format for removal, because it hit like Siege Rhino and it hit other 4 toughness cards. But now with Green White Megamorph, we have a lot of them that are the 3 toughness. So I'm thinking that Ultimate Price might be our go-to removal. And the problem with Ultimate Price is it didn't hit things like Savage Knuckleblade. It didn't hit Mantis Rider, even though I guess Valor Stance doesn't either. But the format, when the first rotated, it was full of Siege Rhinos and Mantis Riders and your occasional teamer player playing Savage Knuckleblade. A lot of multicolored creatures Ultimate Price did not hit. But let's just take a look at these Green-White Megamorph decks and see how, if this Warriors deck is positioned good against those decks. So in front of you, here we have the top finishes from the SCG Standard Open Atlanta, and you can see it's just tons of green-white Megamorph, and then a few Jeskai Blacks, which is a deck that I think a lot of times that Warriors can just get the jump on. And then there was 1 5-color control, but other than that, it's just all green-white Megamorph. I mean, if you can go clear down here, there's just tons of green-white Megamorph. So let's just look at an example of green-white Megamorph. Let me zoom this up for you. So first of all, almost every deck is playing Hangerback Walker. The card, admittedly, is a little bit rough for Warriors because you have to punch through it a lot, and it will trade with like a 1-drop and keep back a 1/1. And as bad as that sounds for Hangerback Walker, like spending 2 mana and then, but it's usually 2-for-1's you for just 2 mana, unless you can get some way to punch through it. And we do have some tricks against Hangerback Walker. I might bring in a card that I'm trying to think of, a card that specifically deals with artifacts but doesn't have like a huge downside, or has at least some other utilization other than just destroying an artifact. We used to have an artifact / enchantment hate in the last format, but I can't think of one quite at the moment. We'll look at it here in a second. But Hangerback is difficult. That's my one admittance. But the other cards in this deck are very, very easy for the deck to just punch through, because you're doing something bigger than them on each of the turns. So they start off with like a Warden of the First Tree, and then they're going to have to either block quickly or use their second turn to make it 3/3, and hopefully by then you get either a Lord or a Battle Brawler that then has first strike and still punch through the Warden. Den Protector is often quite slow versus Warriors. They don't want to be casting it for 2, they want to be casting it for more like 5, so they can get some value out of it. Hidden Dragon Slayer is a little bit of a nuisance because our creatures do get power 4 or greater, but again, it's one of those morph cards they have to put out. At 2/1 lifelinker, you can still punch through, or even if you have to trade with it, that's not that bad. And Deathness Raptor tends not to be an issue with Mardu, the one that exiles, and we'll look at that in a second. Same with Nissa. Nissa's just a little bit slow, and Wingmate Rock, a lot of times we can just completely punch through by the time they get Wingmate Rock or Gideon or these type of cards. So I think Warriors just is a lot quicker. They do have like the fetch lands that are going to cost them life. No life gain through any of their lands. They usually will just tutor up basic lands before they tutor up the Canopy Vista, so it can come into play untapped, but usually it's not that big of an issue. The sideboard does have Surge of Righteousness in a lot of these lists, and Master the Unseen, that can give our Warriors deck a bit of an issue, and same with Gideon's Reproach. But if they have to start playing the removal route, a lot of times Warriors just outclasses, and then you have cards like Secure the Waste and Brutal Horde Chief that can just push through that last bit of damage. Dragonlord Drumaka is a card that I'm used to playing against in against Abzan, and it has never really given me much issue because it's pretty easy to kill with Valor stances and self-inflicted wounds. So speaking of self-inflicted wounds, let's go back over to the deck list. That's why I think this deck is so well positioned, is because of the self-inflicted wound. So it hits every card basically in their deck. So a lot of the times you'll go one drop and they'll put out, if they put out a Warden, I don't know if I care too much about a Warden, but you can always just self-inflicted wound it and then get in there for an additional 2, and they're already down 2 from the self-inflicted wound. And then subsequently you start drawing, you bring in all your ultimate prices, and those can kill off basically everything in their deck as well. I don't know if these Merciless Executioners are actually good enough in the metagame right now. I was bringing them in. It was really good against Abzan because Abzan wanted to establish like a Siege Rhino threat, and Merciless Executioner was a way to kind of to trade up. You could trade up a Blood-Soaked Champion for a Merciless Executioner and then eventually get your Blood-Soaked Champion back. So another all-star which we might actually go up and count is the Bloodchin Rager. Bloodchin Rager allows it to basically have all your warriors have menace, and so Hangerback Walker is a lot less of an issue with the Bloodchin Rager. And then Valorous Stances are like kind of the wild card here because they were so good at the first of the rotation, but they've kind of become not as good against that deck. There's not a lot of power toughness 4 or greater in the green-white Megamorph at first until they get to their later drops, and I just might switch these out for an ultimate price or maybe just go 2 and 2. The good thing about Valorous Stance is a lot of times it's never a dead card though, because of the indestructibility of the second mode of this, which, or the first mode, the target creature gains indestructible. You can have that in your advantage when they try to command your guy, so they'll put a +1 counter on their creature and then try to fight it, and then you can give your guy indestructible and at least save your guy. And so it's not like a dead card. And for those occasional Abzan decks that are still roaming around, Valor Stance is very good against Anafenza and very good against the Siege Rhino. And that's why I was very hesitant with ultimate prices, is those 2 particular cards. We will be doing very well against both Deathmist Raptor and the Den Protector with Mardu Woe Reaper. And I'm still debating whether Dragon Hunter is the right play or Mardu Shadow Spear going up in count is the right way to go, because sometimes you need to dash this guy in and get the haste on it so you can get a Blood-Soaked Champion back, whether it takes a whole turn with Dragon Hunter. Versus the grinding control matchups, the Shadow Spear is a lot better than Dragon Hunter. I used to have the Mardu War Striker or Striker, whatever, the one that puts in the 2/1 for 3 mana, but it just didn't feel... Our 3 drops are kind of weird in this deck. So this is just the gist of the deck. The Chief of the Scales are not mainboarded. There's no point to them unless you're going up against a red deck where you want to get your creatures out of Wild Slash range. And then usually if I'm going up against red, I take out all of my 1-drops that just die very easily and then just rely on the 2-drops to do more of the work. I'm thinking about going back up to 4 Secure the Waste because they're that good of a card. And I've actually even thought about bringing in a Wingmate Rock of our own, because I do think that Wingmate Rock is incredibly powerful right now in the format where there's a lot of 1-for-1ing. So that's basically the gist of the deck. I mean, I guess this deck does have some answers, but you have as many sideboard hate as they do, so I don't think they get much better after the sideboard with the ultimate prices coming in. But let's just take a look at some other of the decks. So the other big deck is this Jeskai Black, and that's where Self-Inflicted Wound is so good against as well. So it hits their Ojutai, hits their Monastery Mentors, their Mantis Riders, and their Seekers. Ultimate price in this one only hits their Mentor and their Seekers, so I usually don't bring it in. That's where Valor Stance is a little bit better, because if they try to attack with their Dragonlord Ojutai, you can kill it. If Seeker gets above 4, you can kill it. And it is quite awkward with Jace, because they can flip Jace quite fast and then start getting value out of more Wild Slashes and whatnot. But Crackling Doom tends not to be that good against you. The Sorin, you can punch through a lot of times without them doing much. And Murder's Cut Treasure Cruise, they have to have a lot of stuff in their graveyards to utilize the Delve, which they do use a ton of fetch lands. But again, that 1 damage from the fetch land, or 2 damage or 3 damage that they're going to be doing, starts to build up a lot in this matchup. And Warriors, I think Warriors is just so much better positioned now without Searing Blood in the format and a few other like cards that just made mono red the aggro deck of choice. We do have to worry about Radiant Flames. It is like one of the cards that is very good against us, but sometimes if you get 2 Chief of the Scales, you're out of the Radiant Flames range. Now, I've had a few people suggest that I splash in reds, particularly for Mardu Ascendancy. So let's just check that. Mardu Ascendancy is an enchantment that gets you out of Radiant Flames range, basically, but you have to sacrifice it. So whenever non-token creature you control attacks, put a red goblin creature onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. So, but what you really use Mardu Ascendancy is just basically to get a +0/+3. Usually it can put you out of Languish range and can also put you out of Radiant Flames range. So the other cards that I like is Radiant Spoils. I'm probably going to put this in the sideboard. Again, if you start to go up against those green-white matchups and they become grindy, Raider Spoils can get you ahead in the match. The only problem with the green-white deck is they're going to be running 4 Dromoka's commands, and that you never want to sack a 4-mana enchantment to a command. The good news is they end up using their commands quite quickly, but you never know when they can top deck into it to destroy your Raider Spoils and whatnot. So I'm thinking another Sorin might just replace Raider Spoils, and we can keep one in the sideboard. So for now, I think I'm going to keep the Merciless Executioners in the deck. I think there's enough matchups where they're quite relevant, and I'm not quite sure if we're going to cut some Valor stances from the main board and just run like a couple Ultimate Prices. I don't know if I would rather just put Ultimate Prices rather than Raider Spoils in here right now, like 2 Ultimate Prices, and even move over like a Bloodchin Rager over to the sideboard. But Bloodchin right now is good against a lot of those decks. I think we'll put a Valor stance over and play 3 and 2 at the moment, and the 2 Raider Spoils in the sideboard. Still currently only running 1 Sorin because I never want to see 2 of them. Sorin basically is only going to... It's going to work pretty well against like the grindy control matchups, but he's actually quite vulnerable against those even. So Sorin is basically your 4-drop, you plus him, and then you try to win that turn or just get it so far ahead that you're going to be winning. It has a very good implications with Secure the Waste. And I'm actually debating whether we take down the Brutal Horde Chiefs, because that's the problem with this deck is it has 5 at the 4-drop, and you want to be closing out the game by then. And then you have to think of Secure the Waste as 4-drops as well, because you really want to be casting them for at least 4 mana to get the 3 white soldier tokens or warrior tokens into play. This deck does need Shambling Vents. You will replace probably, I might keep 1 Scoured Barrens and then replace 3, and then like a swamp for the 4 of Shambling Vents. But we'll have to wait and see if the Barons actually hurt us too much. By maybe a 4 and 2 is the right play, and ditch a Plains and a Swamp for more Shambling Vents. But Shambling Vents also help you against those heavy control-based decks. So I'm going to run this a little bit here and there on MTGO, see if we can get the green-white Megamorph matchups. I know this deck does very well against Abzan because I've just run the gauntlet of Abzan decks. Again, the first 2 weeks after rotation, my local metagame and MTGO is just tons and tons of Abzan variants with Anafenzas and Siege Rhinos and whatnot. So, and this deck just completely ran over them. So, anywho, we will go ahead and queue this up. This has been Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.